In January, we began 2024 with an unprecedented cybersecurity event called the Mother of All Breaches. And that massive data leak encompassed 12 terabytes of information, including over 260 billion records organised over 3,800 folders. And what made this event different was it wasn't a singular incident, it was rather a compilation of numerous breaches, including data from major platforms from LinkedIn, Twitter, Tencent, Dropbox, and so many more. So this got me thinking. In a world where cybersecurity threats loom larger and more complex than ever before, how do leaders navigate these turbulent waters to not only protect, but also enable and drive forward their organisation? And this is a question I wanted to explore today with Jim Doggett, Chief Information Security Officer at Semperis. And he has a career spanning over 35 years in leading cybersecurity and risk programs. And Jim has been at the forefront of redefining what it means to be a CISO in today's digital landscape. So from coaching emerging CISOs to implementing visionary strategies that extend beyond traditional security measures, Jim's going to be bringing with him today a wealth of experience and insights into building resilient, forward-thinking cybersecurity frameworks that empower businesses. So our conversation today promises to shed light on the evolving role of the CISO, the critical balance between enabling businesses and ensuring security, the critical balance between enabling businesses and also ensuring their security, and the strategies that can help these businesses harness the full power of the digital infrastructure so they can enjoy sustained success. That is the plan. But before we get today's guest on, I need to pay the bills. We've got a huge podcast hosting fee to pay for when we're releasing 30 episodes a month. And this month, I've partnered with a company called Kiteworks. Now, legacy MFT tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. So companies that continue relying on outdated technology, though, they put their sensitive data at risk. And in a world where digital threats evolve daily, the need for a secure, modern solution has never been more pressing. Well, enter Kiteworks, the beacon of security and efficiency in managed file transfer. And Kiteworks isn't just any MFT solution. With its FedRAMP moderate authorization awarded by the Department of Defense since 2017, Kiteworks sets a new standard for security. So please, step into the future of managed file transfer with Kiteworks. You can find out more information at kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get you started today. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Houston, Texas, where Jim is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Jim. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. This will be, I think, a great session. We'll see where it goes. But I currently am the CISO at Semperis, a company that focuses on one of the larger risks in my mind in security realm today, which is resiliency area of Active Directory. And we'll get into that later if we get time. But that's what I've been. Historically, I have been at many large companies, from AIG as a CISO to Kaiser Permanente, a large healthcare entity, as a CISO, and before that, JP Morgan, and then I spent a long career at EY. So I've been doing this a long time. I will have to admit, I'm a reformed bean counter or auditor, if you want to call it all that. So I transitioned my world from decades of doing audits to technology to security, which I think actually has been a very interesting path.
Wow, incredibly cool. I seem to recall on this podcast, I'm trying to think how far back we'd be going here. Maybe last summer, I was chatting to a guy called Simon Hodgkinson. He was over in the UK. Do you know him, or is it just a completely different office and different market?
No, he is one of our advisors at Semperis. Simon is, and the interesting fact is I will be with him tonight here in Houston.
No.
Yeah, coming down we've got the rodeo starting, and we've got the barbecue part of that cook-off, and we've got a session tonight with several CISOs here in Houston that he's hosting that I'll be attending with him.
Fantastic. How about that? Please tell me you're going to get a rodeo down there. You've got to make something happen.
We are definitely going to do all of our best to see if we drag him, even if we have to hog tie him to get him to go.
Awesome. Well, make sure you say hello from me. Hopefully I'll remember being on here last year. But one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today is with your extensive experience in cybersecurity, how do you distinguish between leadership and management in this field? And why is the distinction critical in today's digital landscape? Because I'm seeing so much at the moment about CISOs, for example, dramatically leaving the field. And there's a lot of pressure and a lot that seems to be happening there at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's an evolution of CISOs. If you went back 15, 20 years, almost every CISO was purely a technical individual. I'm not trying to talk down to any of them in that, but largely it was a role where they put a plan together, put a projects together, executed on them, and that was that. It just isn't. Today, there's a huge expectation from board levels to senior management that they will actually manage risks. So in my mind, from a leadership perspective now, there's a big difference today. And I think in the past, it was more management. So to me, the leadership aspects are things like setting the vision. How much security do we want? How are we going to achieve it? Are we going to strong arm it? Are we going to negotiate? Are we going to work with the business? Things like that. I think it also, their role today is they have to establish a culture of security. And what I mean by that is, if I go back to AIG, we had probably 700-800 people in the security group. I probably did no direct security myself. Yeah. What I did was enable and establish the vision where we wanted to go, and I had to rely on my lieutenants to put the actual projects together and actually execute on those. So to me, a CISO of today is a politician, risk officer, a visionary, a coach, all those kind of things. But way down the line, you're going to see a security execution kind of person.
And it's interesting you say that there, the evolution of the CISO role. So I'm curious if we dig a little bit deeper on that. How have you seen that role of the CISO evolve from primarily focusing on building and defending digital infrastructure to almost being a key enabler in advancing business propositions? Because I'm back in my IT career, the boardroom didn't quite get the value of cybersecurity of something that they may need, they may not need. But obviously with the breaches we're seeing this year already is eclipsing last year. How are you seeing this role evolve?
Yeah, again, as I think as I started to get into it, I think it's a far less technical role than it is today. First and foremost, I think you're a risk officer. Today, we have to accept that we can't fix everything. We all lived in a world in the past where it was black and white. Either it's secure or it's not. And we said we had to fix it if it wasn't. We created a list, and the only question is what order we focus on them. Today, I think much of security is about which ones do we need to fix, which ones can actually hurt us the most. And especially with this ransomware, what's going on today, where the penalty for a security breach can be much greater than even it was in the past. And I'm not saying the theft of data is not good. It's really bad. But I'd rather have my data stolen than I would be out of business. And today, that's a reality of security. So yes, I think the role is we've been forced to evolve. I think also boards expect more of us today. Even if you're an SEC registered company now, in the U.S. at least anyway, you've got now rules that require you to, and you have liability if you don't deal with security at the board level. So I think that it's forcing us to become part of the business. I think another piece of it, which I always find interesting, is that the way we got money, at least I got money in the past, is sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, all that kind of stuff, where you sold that, if we don't do this, something bad is going to happen. And as a result, we got, you do the fear, you get more money. You do more fear, you get a little more money. I don't think that exists today. I think today you actually have to demonstrate efficiency. You actually have to show a return on your investment, maybe, of what's out there. So it's requiring you to become more of a business person, if you will, than you are a pure technician. Still got to have the technical skills. Your team, you can't do security without having technical. But at this point in my career, technical skills are way, way down the line of what I have to deal with day to day. I hire people who I trust that have those skills and will educate me as I need to.
It's interesting how tech teams have all been on that journey where originally they might have been perceived as business blockers, the guys that always say no, to becoming the people that deliver efficiency and become the business enablers that generate business value. So can you elaborate on how a CISO could maybe harness the power of that digital infrastructure that every business needs now to drive business success? And are there any key strategies that stand out for doing just that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. One is, I think as the security group, you've got to realize today you are a cost center, not a revenue center, which has been always the case. The ultimate decision on what a company does lies with those that make the money. So it behooves us to get their endorsement or their support so that the money comes a lot easier. So again, negotiation skills, sales skills, learning to talk only business, no technical talk at all. Yeah. I mean, that's the last thing a business person wants to do. And I'm not talking about a technical IT person who's your business person. I'm talking about the business, the people that actually, generate the cash for the company, the salespeople and other teams like that, the manufacturing team, whatever it may be. So yes, I think that we are great enablers if we actually listen to the business and understand what could go wrong. Here's a couple of examples maybe I could even give that I've thought about anyway from business enablement. Our entire sales team, anytime they go to a new potential customer, the customer, rightly so today, worries greatly about how secure we are. All of a sudden, they're worried, do you have malware embedded in your code? If I give you confidential information, will you protect it adequately? And they actually want answers to that. And I will tell you now, it's not something most security groups like doing, but we have to. The business can't answer those correctly. We have to help them answer those questions. So we get involved with the customers and give them that assurance that, oh, yes, we're protected, and here's how we are, and we'll go as deep as you want. We've got a team we're a small company at Semperis, but we've got a team that's what they do now. That's part of our security team that helps them enable it. So I think things like that are where we absolutely are. The other part is understanding what the risks are, I think, for the business. A great example, again, of that is resiliency. Historically speaking, I don't think that we focused heavily on resiliency because it was an IT thing. Resiliency was, a fire burning down that building, a hurricane or a flood or whatever it may be, whatever it may be. But with the advent of ransomware, all of a sudden, resiliency is a real deal. If we get ransomware, it puts us out of business, and that is a resiliency issue that we are accountable for. So I think helping the business understand that risk and say, well, what are we going to do to fix that? How do we understand what systems you need up first? How do we help you talk in security terms of what could prevent it, or even more importantly, to recover from it quickly to minimize damage? Those kind of talks, I think, the business side of the house will be quite interested in.
And in your view then, how should a modern CISO approach their role to not just protect, but also extend and enhance the business plans of their organizations? Because from the outside looking in, it feels like it must be an incredibly delicate balance.
I think it is. I mean, we do have a responsibility to be secure, to help the company become secure. At the same time, we have a responsibility not to get in the way of the business being successful. And at least I've adopted a philosophy long ago is for me and my teams are that we don't say no lightly. In other words, the easy thing to do is I want to do this and we just say no because it's not secure. You can't do that anymore. You have to say, well, we can't maybe do it this way. We can't allow you to have, all your customers to come right in and get to our crown jewels, but here is an alternative, or here are some alternatives we could work out, and we'll work with you to make sure it works, and we'll directly work with your customers to make sure that interaction works. So to me, that's the business enablement, where it's almost an attitude, and again, comes back to leadership and the culture you set, because again, you as the CISO are not going to be the person always talking with everyone who has a problem in the business. You've got to trust your lieutenants and the others, so you have to establish that culture so that they'll be ready to answer in the same way that you do. I mean, I hate to call it, but it's politics to a large extent. And we always like to say we stay out of that, but you can't. Part of the business now.
And you mentioned leadership there, so I'm curious, how can CISOs or any CISO listening effectively maybe reframe that relationship with the board and the leadership team to actually be seen as an integral part of the overall business strategy, because they need to be right in the heart of this, don't they?
Absolutely. I find it sort of interesting because I think part of it, this is one of those rare occasions where we're getting help from the outside to a degree. Regulations throughout the world now are starting to require that boards are educated, and I even have people on their boards that are security knowledgeable, we'll call it. Back in my day, that was just not the case. You'd be really happy if you found someone who was just a former CIO who had good technical skills enough to understand what's going on. So I think part of that is being helped from the outside. The other is, again, this to me comes back to what your relationship is with the business. Are you a technical person trying to explain to them why they have to do something or else, or have you developed that ability to talk in business of, here's what an impact to your business could be. Is this something you're worried about or not? And let them form the conclusion so that then you can say, well, we can help you with that. And to me, it's ultimately doing a lot of the same things, but you're having to sell it first and get their buy-in. And to do that, you cannot do it in talking bits and bytes or, even into ransomware, the technical aspects of that. You've got to talk to it in their business terms. A great example is, say, ransomware. If this application of yours, let's say we're at a hospital now, if you can't, Dr. X, if you cannot reach your medical records, how does that impact your ability to deliver patient care? And that's why we'll focus today on something called Active Directory, because if it is not up and running, you actually cannot get access to any of your clinical systems. And in turn, that can impact your business. So what we're trying to do is to help you make sure that doesn't happen through a ransomware attack. Things like that, I think you just have to sort of change the conversation a little bit.
100% with you. And just to bring to life everything that we're talking about here, are you able to share any examples of how decisions made by CISOs can maybe directly contribute to a business profitability and sustainability? Because huge topics right now. It'd be great to bring it to life with some examples.
I'd agree with you there. And again, the one I gave you earlier is understanding things like resiliency today. Again, that's fairly new to CISOs. At least in my opinion, it is. We worried about stopping the bad guy, detecting the bad guy, not on how we recover it in an efficient time. The recovery was someone else's problem. So I think from a business perspective, understanding that resiliency is a great entree into it. And again, I think it's understanding then from a role perspective, how do you become valuable to them? How do you help them get confident that something is not going bad? If something bad happens, we're here and we've actually practiced. And that's another great example of resiliency. Requires you to actually do tabletops and do recovery exercises. As much as they're boring and they're take up your time from the business, if you haven't practiced, it's very difficult to do. And again, that's things that at hospitals, physicians understand. They understand if they don't practice their trade, they actually have a hard time doing their job. You can go to any business kind of unit to do that. So I think that there's a whole lot that we can do from an examples to help enable the business. I said earlier about helping customers. I mean, as I say, I've got 2 people on my team. All they do is interact with our customers in answering their questions on security and risk. Does that improve my security? Rarely. But it enables us to actually sell more product, because a lot of companies, unless they get comfortable with, you're selling them a product, and how many examples have there been where there's been a problem as a result of some product that you put in your environment and find out it's got malware in it and it hurts the business. So I think those kind of things are what we have to do. And it's more of how we think about it. Historically speaking, again, we take this beautiful NIST framework or whatever framework we use. We lay out all the categories. We do a maturity model of what it is. And I will tell you now, the business couldn't care less about any of that. We need it internally, but the business really doesn't. All they want to hear is that nothing bad is going to happen that's going to interrupt my business or cause them either lose customers through reputation or lose something that's valuable. We get fined and all that kind of good stuff, depending on what group it is. So to me, it is a very different role and a different approach that we have to take as a CISO today.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you, and I was reading about how another passion close to your heart is mentoring future CISOs. So based on your experience in mentoring up-and-coming CISOs, any key advice that you would give them about balancing the technical aspects of cybersecurity with the business strategy? Because I said a few moments ago, it's a tricky balance. Any advice around that?
Absolutely. The biggest lesson that I learned, and again, I've mentored several folks that have become CISOs. The hardest thing was to teach them what I call gray. Yeah. Everything in security technicians' perspective, everything's either black or white. It's secure or it's not. If it's not secure, we got to fix it. So you have to teach gray and help them understand that we can't fix everything at once. If so, your job will be gone anyway. So that's really not where we are. The key is what can hurt us the most today. And even today's time, as I go around the country talking to CISOs, I find it amazing that I hear this all the time is that, well, I agree with you. This area you're talking about probably is a big risk to us, but unfortunately, we've already got our budget this year and we can't change it at this point. Maybe next year we can start considering these other things. So they're treating it like a tool that is, as opposed to looking at it for a risk, because if it truly was a risk that it could impact my or my company's position, you would think that from a risk perspective, I would be more than willing to rotate what I'm doing in secure, how I'm spending my money. But apparently, a lot of folks don't feel they have that power yet or that ability to influence the company and say, we're going to put this project on hold and put this one up. Be that AI, be it, in my world, it's ransomware and how to attack that, because I consider ransomware a higher risk than someone breaking in and stealing marketing data or some other data that's out there. All bad, but again, we have to make choices today. So I think the biggest lesson for CISOs today, number one, is you've got to balance it and not act like you're trying to fix everything. Second thing is, I won't say never, but I'll say rarely say no. And never say no unless you've got an alternative answer. It's not their job to fix the problems we identify. They may have to execute on part of it, but the coming up with the idea of what's there, to me, is entirely rests in our realm if we want to be successful.
Fantastic advice. And if we dare to look ahead into the future, January was a pretty scary month alone for breaches, high-profile breaches. But are there any emerging trends or challenges that you foresee in the integration of cybersecurity and business strategy? And how should CISOs be preparing for some of these challenges?
Clearly, again, we'll look at the big elephant in the room here is AI is, I think, a big one. Bad guys are already using AI to do a better job of phishing and everything they're doing. And yes, we need to use it. What I would also say, though, is we as security people love shiny balls and we love to run to them. And I believe AI to some degree is there. And all I'm saying with this is that don't drop what else you're doing to run to AI as the biggest risk out there. Because today, I can't tell you a documented risk of a major incident that's happened in the world with AI yet. It will come. So we do need to plan for it, but don't drop everything else you're doing. I could go to anyone here who listens to this podcast from a security perspective and probably say, what causes most of your problems? Too much access, poor programming techniques, phishing. It's the same thing that have been around for a long time. It's the basics. So you can't not do the basics and run to these silver shiny balls that are out there. And that's my biggest worry of some of these things. That we lose focus on what really is causing it. Bad guys are not dumb. They go towards the easiest route they can get to get in. And they're not going to use their, what I call black belt kung fu, if they don't need to. Why waste it here when I can get in a much easier way? So I think that's a piece of what I would just caution folks on. I do think that, again, the concept of identity, I think, is going to, everyone needs to be thinking of identity today in terms of, because you think about it, perimeter, everyone talks now that there is no perimeter, which is largely true. We let everybody in our systems. So the question is, how do you validate who they are, what they are, and also what are they doing, which sort of transforms to, we're a little less worried about who's getting in because we can't even verify who it is. We're a little more interested in what behavior they're doing. So how do we sort of shift our security systems over time to more behavioral? So, you log in normally from 8 to 5 your time, and all of a sudden at 3 a.m, you're logging in. Is that a problem? All of a sudden, new access has been given to you, which is pretty high level. Is that something we should be thinking about? It's more things like that, and certainly AI will help with that. Machine learning will help with that, and just good old-fashioned stepping back and considering what could go wrong and how you deal with that, I think, is going to be a big piece of that.
Well, I think that's a powerful moment to end on today. But of course, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your insights. But I'm going to now ask you to share one final gift to everyone listening. You've got someone with 35 years of experience leading cybersecurity and risk programs at global organizations. But the question I'm going to ask now is, what is the soundtrack to that career? Is there a song that means something to you that maybe we can add to our Spotify playlist? I always ask my guests this question, but what song would you like to leave us with and why?
This is sort of interesting because as I think about it, it's going to be a British song, which I'm not saying surprises me, but I found that interesting just based on where I'm talking to you from today. But
yeah.
Anyway, so I would say it's going to be a Rolling Stones song right now. And it's, you can't always get what you want. And if you continue the lyrics on, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. Those to me are words to live by. It encompasses a lot of things I think that are society-wise need to be focused on today. One, it talks about if you try sometimes. So effort still is how you win the game in my mind. It's not about talking about things. It's about doing and getting things done. And then a lot of times you've got to learn, you've got to accept what you get. And maybe it's really, like I say, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a good thing. You just don't realize it right now. So, and me, that's one of my all-time favorites. And it's actually, if you go up to my music listing room, you will see that quote up on the wall.
Wow, I love it. I can't tell you how hard it was for me not to burst into song as you were reading the lyrics out there. As you're talking to me from Texas, I wasn't sure if you're going to go with ZZ Top or something like that, but a Stones classic, absolutely brilliant. And for anyone listening, just want to find out more information about Semperis, anything that we talked about today, and maybe even connect with you or talk to a member of your team, where would you like to point everyone listening?
You can always find under James Doggett, under LinkedIn, probably the simplest way to go or go to semperis.com, semperis.com. And you can find all of us there as well.
Well, we covered so much there, from talking about the traditional CISO role versus the modern CISO, how they can harness the power of digital infrastructure and reframe that CISO relationship with leadership and the board and help make businesses make decisions for business, for the business too. Incredible insights, and also left us with an absolute killer tune, which will be going on our Spotify playlist at the end of this podcast. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today.
My pleasure, and I appreciate you inviting me today. This is always fun.
I think it's clear that the role of the CISO is more critical and complex than ever before. And in an era where digital threats can derail companies almost overnight, I think Jim's expertise and approach, they offer a beacon for navigating these challenges with both foresight and resilience. And the journey from being a technical expert to a business enabler and a visionary leader, yes, it's fraught with obstacles, but as Jim has shared with us today, it is also filled with opportunities to redefine impact of cybersecurity and how today's CISOs can leverage that unique position that they find themselves in to not only protect, but propel their organisation into a secure and prosperous future. But hey, that's just me and my takeaway having listened to Jim today. I'd love for you to share your thoughts with me by joining this ongoing conversation about transforming challenges into opportunities in the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity and business. It is a complex space, but share with me your experiences by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. Insights, questions, pitches to come on the show, whatever it is. Remember, this is not a monologue, this podcast. I want it to be a dialogue. It's not just about answering questions, but sparking that broader discussion on the pivotal role of cybersecurity and shaping the future of business. So let me know what insights you're going to be taking away from our conversation with Jim and how maybe they might even influence your perspective on cybersecurity and leadership. But we're out of time now, I'm afraid. So I'm going to rest these vocal cords now and prepare for tomorrow's guest. And hopefully you'll join me again. But thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.